We're big on curries in Australia. Thai, Indian, Malaysian. They're a major part of our cuisine these days. Curries all follow the same basic principle. You start with a spice paste, add in some aromatics like ginger, lemongrass, add in some liquid, whether it be stock or coconut milk, and cook that into your meat, fish or vegetables to give it added flavour and fragrance. You can buy curry pastes at the supermarket, Thai red or green being the most popular these days, but there's nothing quite as rewarding as pounding it yourself. I've got a prawn laksa for you later on in the show, so now I'm going to make my laksa curry paste. Start with a red onion, take the skin off, chop it quite rough. We're going to put that in the mortar and pestle, as we're going to pound one at a time. And once we've ground one, then we add the next ingredient. When you're pounding your onion, add a little bit of salt, some sea salt, gives a little bit of texture which helps break down the onion. Next is the ginger. Just roughly chop that so it's easy to break down in the mortar and pestle. Next is some galangal. It's part of the ginger family. I like to cut this quite a lot thinner than the ginger because it is a lot woodier. Going to move on to the garlic. You can use a food processor, but I love using a mortar and pestle. It's part of the pleasure of doing it yourself. All the lovely flavours and aromas come out as you're pounding. Okay, turmeric next. This is fresh turmeric. You can use dried and ground. Gives distinctive colour. Lemongrass, it's one of my favourite spices. Just use the bottom third, that's where all the flavour is. So discard the rest, take off the root, and just finely slice it. Again, this is quite hard to break down in the mortar and pestle, so I slice it quite thin. Save a little bit of arm work later on. This is one of my favourite spices. Next we've got some chilies, just some dried ones. Next I'm going to use some candle nuts. You can use macadamias instead. Basically they're just a thickening agent for the sauce. These curry pastes should last about a month in your fridge if they're in an airtight container, and drizzle a little bit of just vegetable oil over the top to seal in all the flavours. Next, some shrimp paste. Really stinky stuff, but used in small quantities has a great flavour. Just a tiny bit. Okay, now we've got some coriander roots. Just use the root and a little bit of the stem of the coriander. Most of the flavour of the coriander is actually in the root and the stem. The leaves are more for perfuming. Now for some Vietnamese mint. These leaves are really quite sharp and spicy. Just a few of them. Okay, now we can put the dried spices in. Got some coriander seeds, some fennel seeds, a couple of cardamom pods, about a teaspoon of cumin seeds, some cloves, just 2 or 3, they're really strong, and just a dash of cinnamon. A lot of people dry roast their spices for a curry paste. They're great in the thicker ones like the red ones or the Indian ones, but for laksa, I find if you don't roast them, throw them in fresh, they get a lovely tangy, summery flavour to them. Well, that's done. Later on I've got a great prawn laksa to make using this paste, so don't go away.